Is it worth the risk to keep on going?
Sure, to win. I mean, that's what we've always done. The money's never been a factor. We raced when we didn't have any. If I can win races and be a contender for that championship, I'm staying where I am, and I'm not ready to back off a bit.
This is undoubtedly one of the toughest announcements that I've ever personally had to make. But after the accident in Turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt Sr. is remembered by many as a fearless racing icon and unmatched force in NASCAR, known for his grit, daring skill, and competitive spirit. Fans admired him not just for his victories on the track, but for the passion and determination he brought to every race. Nicknamed the Intimidator, Earnhardt drove with fearless aggression, pushing limits and inspiring millions with his legendary black number 3 car. But behind his heroic legacy lies a heartbreaking end that shocked the racing world. On February 18, 2001, during the final lap of the Daytona 500, fans were expecting another triumphant finish. Instead, they witnessed a tragedy. As Earnhardt raced in a tight pack at over 180 miles per hour, his car was involved in a collision, veering sharply into the concrete wall. At first, the crash didn't appear fatal. His car's safety cage was intact, and the damage seemed survivable. But appearances were deceiving. The impact caused a basilar skull fracture, a catastrophic injury at the base of the skull that led to immediate and irreversible brain damage. Emergency crews arrived quickly and rushed him to Halifax Medical Center in Daytona Beach. But despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead at 5:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The news sent shockwaves across NASCAR and beyond, with fans, fellow racers, and the entire sports community devastated. Many vividly remember where they were when they heard the announcement. Longtime rival and friend Jeff Gordon called the news a punch to the stomach, echoing the disbelief shared by many. In the aftermath, investigators analyzed every detail of the crash, raising serious questions about safety equipment. At the time, Earnhardt was not wearing a HANS device, a head and neck restraint that experts believe might have saved him by limiting fatal head movement during the impact. Some drivers later admitted they avoided it due to discomfort, including Rusty Wallace, who said, "None of us thought this could happen to Dale." The tragedy prompted a major turning point for NASCAR, triggering sweeping changes in safety protocols. For those on the scene, the memory of that day remains raw. A paramedic recalled, "We did everything we could, but his injuries were just too severe." What made it even more devastating was the autopsy report. It revealed not only the fatal skull fracture that severed communication between the brain and vital organs, leading to instant death, but also a grim list of other injuries: 8 broken ribs, a fractured sternum likely from the seatbelt's force, a broken left ankle, and multiple bruises across his body. The report made it painfully clear just how brutal the crash truly was. Longtime friend and former crew chief Larry McReynolds reflected on his disbelief, saying, "I really thought Dale would be okay." But the autopsy told a different story. For many, Dale Earnhardt SI's death remains one of the most tragic moments in racing history, a sobering reminder of the dangers drivers face and a legacy that forever changed the sport. The story of Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s tragic death reveals just how devastating the crash really was. The official report raised difficult questions, most notably why he didn't survive when other drivers had walked away from similar accidents. At the time, Dale wasn't wearing a full-face helmet or a HANS, head and neck support, device equipment that had not yet become standard but was already available. Many drivers avoided the HANS device, citing discomfort, but the autopsy report changed everything. Experts agreed that the device could have prevented the fatal skull fracture by stopping his head from snapping forward with deadly force. The findings weren't just heartbreaking, they sparked theories, debates, and intense scrutiny, especially surrounding the seatbelt. In the days and weeks after the crash, the seatbelt controversy dominated headlines. Experts analyzed the remains of the belt, while fans examined slow-motion replays of Dale's final moments, looking for answers. The emotional weight of his death made people desperate for a cause, something tangible to explain why he didn't walk away. It wasn't only about technical failure, it was about grief. The broken belt became a focal point for a community too stunned to accept the loss. NASCAR launched a full investigation, and an independent expert, Dr. Barry Mayers from Duke University, a respected biomechanics specialist with no ties to racing, was appointed to find answers. After reviewing autopsy photos and crash data, Dr. Mayers explained that the force of the impact caused Dale's head to whip forward violently while his body remained restrained, leading to an instantly fatal skull fracture. His conclusion helped close the technical debate, but for fans, the heartbreak remained. The belt had failed, the injury was real, and Dale was gone. Dale's team owner and close friend, Richard Childress, later said, "I wish we had all the answers. We wanted to believe there was something we could fix, but sometimes the worst happens even when everything's done right." His death shocked the world, but to understand its impact, we have to revisit the journey that made him a legend. Dale Earnhardt Sr. came from humble beginnings in the small mill town of Kannapolis, North Carolina. There, racing wasn't just entertainment, it was a way of life. His father, Ralph Earnhardt, was a short-track legend and a 1956 NASCAR sportsman champion known for his tough driving and mechanical expertise. The garage became Dale's classroom, and the racetrack his dream. Though his father was cautious about Dale joining the sport, the younger Earnhardt was determined, restless and driven. He dropped out of school by 9th grade, chasing the only thing that ever made sense to him, racing. In 1975, Dale made his NASCAR debut at the World 600 in Charlotte. He didn't win, but his aggressive, fearless driving style stood out. His path wasn't easy, he didn't come from money, and often struggled to keep his car running. He borrowed parts, worked tirelessly in garages, and even slept in his trailer because he couldn't afford a hotel. Every race was a risk, and every risk fed his hunger to win. That raw determination eventually made him a champion. While his racing career soared, Dale's personal life was unfolding too. He married 3 times, first to Latane Brown, with whom he had his oldest son, Kerry. His second marriage, to Brenda G., daughter of a famous NASCAR engine builder, produced 2 more children. Kelly and Dale Jr. both would become integral parts of his life and legacy, with Dale Jr. eventually following in his father's footsteps as a NASCAR driver. In 1982, Dale married Teresa Houston, who became his true partner in life and business. They had a daughter, Taylor Nicole, and Teresa would later lead Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, keeping his legacy alive after his death. Despite his public image as a fierce competitor, those closest to him described a deeply private man who loved his family, the outdoors, and working with his hands. Richard Childress once said, "Dale was all business on the track, but at home, he was just a dad." Dale cared more about loyalty than fame, and his drive was rooted in his blue-collar upbringing. He represented the underdog, the kid from the dirt tracks who never gave up. That's why his death hit so hard. He wasn't just a racing icon, was every man who dared to dream big. Tragically, even after his death, Dale's family faced an unexpected legal battle. The crash that claimed his life became one of the most scrutinized incidents in sports history. As the public and media searched for every detail, some reporters filed legal requests under Florida's public records law demanding access to his autopsy photographs. They claimed it was in the interest of transparency, but for the Earnhardt family, it felt like an invasion. It wasn't journalism, it was a violation of their grief. After the tragic and very public death of Dale Earnhardt Sr., his widow, Teresa Earnhardt, found herself in another harrowing battle, this time to protect her husband's dignity from being exploited. In the wake of the accident, she moved quickly to block the release of graphic images from his autopsy, arguing that making such content public would cause deep emotional trauma to Dale's children, loved ones, and friends. She was not alone. Fans, public figures, and politicians rallied behind her, insisting that while public figures live much of their lives in the spotlight, their deaths, especially ones as violent and intimate as Dale, should be treated with compassion and respect. The courtroom soon became more than a place for the Earnhardt family to grieve. It became a battleground for a broader debate over the public's right to know versus a family's right to mourn in peace. Among those who supported Teresa's fight was Florida State Senator Jim King, who, moved by the circumstances, introduced the Earnhardt Family Protection Act. This legislation aimed to restrict public access to autopsy photos unless a judge deemed there was compelling reason to release them. Though born from Dale's tragedy, the act was created to protect all families from having their worst moments turned into public spectacle. The law passed swiftly, bolstered by widespread support and the emotional gravity of Dale's death. During this time, Teresa spoke only occasionally but with quiet strength. She clarified that her efforts were never about hiding the truth but about preserving her husband's dignity and shielding her children from further pain. In one poignant interview, she stated, "It's hard enough to explain to your daughter that her father is gone, but to have to worry that one day she might see his body on the internet, no one should have to live with that." Her words resonated deeply, helping to push the bill forward and reminding many that some aspect of grief deserved to remain private. But Dale Earnhardt's death didn't just spark legal reform, it also triggered a critical transformation in racing safety. One of the most urgent issues highlighted by the crash was the absence of a head and neck support device, commonly known as a HANS device, which Dale was not wearing at the time. This device was designed to prevent fatal injuries by limiting the violent motion of the head and neck during high-speed collisions. Experts later stated that the fatal basilar skull fracture Dale suffered might have been prevented or at least mitigated had he been wearing the device. Before his death, many drivers dismissed the HANS device, claiming it was uncomfortable or unnecessary. But Dale's crash became a wake-up call. Safety experts, engineers, and medical professionals pointed out that the absence of the device in Dale's case allowed his head to whip violently, leading directly to his fatal injury. The tragedy forced NASCAR and the wider motorsport community to reevaluate long-standing safety standards. What once seemed optional was now understood as vital. In the aftermath, the HANS device became mandatory in NASCAR and other motorsport leagues. This shift wasn't just about equipment, it marked a cultural change. Drivers and fans alike began to understand that real bravery meant valuing life over legacy. Jeff Gordon, one of Dale's fiercest competitors, acknowledged this shift, saying in an interview, "Dale was a legend, but he raced in a time when safety gear wasn't what it is today. His passing opened everyone's eyes. It's why we all wear the HANS device now to make sure no one else has to go through what he did." Beyond the HANS device, other improvements followed. Safer barriers, enhanced seat belts, and crash-absorbing wall structures were introduced to better protect drivers. Dale Earnhardt's passing was a monumental loss, but it also became a turning point, a catalyst that reshaped the future of racing safety. His name now lives on not only as a symbol of fierce competitiveness, but also as a legacy that has helped save countless lives. Through grief, a revolution in safety was born, ensuring that the tragedy that took Dale's life would not be repeated.